Building muscle is not only a difficult and slow process, but it is the best thing you can do for your metabolism and body composition, so the last thing you want to do is sacrifice your hard-earned muscle in a fat loss phase. So in this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to consider to not only keep your muscle, but possibly even build some while losing body fat. What you need to know first is what causes muscle loss, and whether you're building or losing muscle all comes down to if your muscle protein synthesis is higher or lower than your muscle protein breakdown. And with that, there's 4 main points to take into consideration to tip the scales in your favor. So we're going to start with the nutrition side of things, then go into strength training, then your cardio, and then your pace of weight loss. So with the nutrition side of things, protein is key here. So if you're in a fat loss phase, what you can do is just kind of take a rough goal weight that you have and eat that many grams of protein. So if you wanted to weigh 160 pounds, eat around 160 grams of protein. Now you can definitely do more, and especially if you're a leaner person who is trying to get to really low levels of body fat, I would recommend going with your current body weight and not a goal weight. Or if you're older, especially getting around 50 plus, you have what's called anabolic resistance to the protein, so you need more protein to get the same benefit. So in that case, either bump up to 1.2 grams per pound of your goal weight, or just use 1 gram of your current weight. If you have a lot of weight to lose, then you're good with just the goal weight. I do recommend splitting up your protein containing meals at least 3 times per day, preferably 4, and this is to maximize the anabolic response from each meal, because you can only utilize so much in one sitting. So splitting up your protein roughly evenly between all your meals is going to be a bit more ideal. Now I'll show you how to find how many calories you should consume at the end of this video, but in terms of your macro splits, if you have a lot more weight to lose, you don't really need to worry too much about your carb and fat ratios. As long as your calories and protein are equated, you're going to be good. The leaner you are, the more value there is in paying a bit closer attention to your carbs and fats. Remember, carbs are more anabolic. They help reduce protein breakdown. That doesn't mean you should just only eat carbs and avoid fat. You need fat for things like hormones and digestion. So I recommend eating around 20 to 30% of your calories from fat, and then the rest of your calories will come from carbs. And then 2 other things you can do with your nutrition to help keep your muscle is utilize things like double refeeds and diet breaks. With the double refeeds, there was a study done at USF where they took one group and had them eat in a continuous 25% calorie deficit all week long, and the other group ate a 35% calorie deficit 5 days a week, and then 2 days per week at maintenance utilizing those refeeds. And at the end of the study, the double refeed group maintained more muscle than the consistent calorie deficit group. And then you can also utilize diet breaks where you eat around maintenance for a week or 2, and this not only helps maintain more muscle, but it also helps keep your hormones and metabolism in a better place. Not to mention the diet fatigue that can show up by constantly dieting. You're going to get a break from that by allowing yourself to eat more. So it's good to be patient and utilize these, as they can really help. Now the second consideration to make is how you're utilizing strength training here, and the big mistake you may be making is always changing how you train when you go into a fat loss phase. Don't shift now to super high reps. Don't start doing much more circuit training and basically trying to turn your strength training into cardio. You want to focus on maintaining your strength best you can. Sure, the longer you do it, the leaner you get, you're probably going to start losing a bit of strength, but also keep in mind there's a difference between absolute strength and relative strength. So say for instance you were 180 pounds and you were squatting 200 pounds for 8 reps. Well, if you're 170 pounds and squatting 200 pounds for 8 reps, you now weigh less, so your relative strength would actually be higher. So you can actually lose some strength, but your relative strength could stay the same. So focus on training hard meaning training close to failure, so within 1 to 3 reps. But it's a good idea to go to failure occasionally so you know what it feels like, because I find many people leave way too much in the tank to get the most out of their training. And then don't rush your rest periods. One of the key factors for building and maintaining muscle is your training volume, and if you don't rest enough, you're going to sacrifice that volume because you're not going to be recovered enough to be as strong for each subsequent set. So I recommend for bigger compound movements to rest for around 2 to 3 minutes, and for smaller isolation movements you can do more like 1 to 2 minutes. Now the next consideration is how to utilize cardio, and while cardio can have an interference effect with muscle, it's usually more in extreme scenarios, especially if you're doing a lot of high intensity stuff. So I do recommend lower intensity cardio to protect your muscle, and keep in mind when you're doing lower intensity forms of cardio, your body's preferentially using fat for fuel, whereas with higher intensity stuff, it's now utilizing carbs for fuel. That doesn't mean that doesn't help with a fat loss phase. The problem is if you're burning through all your glycogen and you're running yourself into the ground with this intense exercise, your training could suffer, and then you're more likely to sacrifice volume and put your muscle more at risk. So if you're not currently doing any cardio, you could just do maybe 15 to 20 minutes most days of the week. I do recommend at least 1 or 2 rest days, but if you're doing 5 or 6 days of 15 to 20 minutes, that's a great place to start. If you're already doing some cardio, then just add maybe 10 to 15 minutes of cardio most days of the week. And then remember, your body's going to adapt, so over time you're going to have to do more. So you don't want to start with doing a ton, because then you don't have room to make adjustments. And that brings me right into the 4th consideration, the pace of weight loss. The faster you lose weight, the more likely you are to lose muscle. So you need to be patient here. I recommend losing usually about 0.5 to 1% of your body weight on average per week. And what's most likely is you'll probably lose a little bit faster, maybe more towards that 1% in the earlier stages as your body adapts adapts and you get leaner, it's gonna slow down over time. And then later on down the road, you might be more towards that 0.5%. But as long as you're kind of roughly in that range, you're gonna be doing everything you can to protect your muscle. So the next question becomes how many calories you should consume, how to know how big of a calorie deficit to create, and how to get through weight loss plateaus. And to get the answer to those questions, if you check out this top video next, I'll walk you through everything you need to know. Otherwise, I think you'll like this bottom video instead, and I'll see you in one of those other videos.